An empire's collapse can sometimes be the start of everything. The fall of Babylon in 539 BCE is remembered as a conquest, but its true legacy was a hidden explosion of innovation. This journey will show you exactly how the end of one powerful civilization ignited a chain reaction of progress that built our modern world. We will trace the path of scattered scholars and lost technologies that transformed science and culture from Persia to Greece. You will discover the surprising link between political collapse and intellectual golden ages. How did a fallen empire's knowledge secretly fuel centuries of discovery? Babylon's skyline was a testament to human ambition, crowned by the legendary Hanging Gardens. This was a city of scholars and engineers, where the rhythm of life was dictated by advanced astronomy and the rule of law. Under the famous Code of Hammurabi, one of the earliest and most complete legal systems, society was structured, but it was in the temples and observatories that the true magic happened. Babylonian scholars meticulously tracked the movements of planets and stars, recording their data on clay tablets with a precision that would not be matched for over 1,000 years. They did not just watch the sky, they decoded it, developing early algebraic concepts to predict celestial events. Their mathematical genius extended to a base 60-number system, a legacy that echoes in our 60-minute hours and 360-degree circles. This was not abstract curiosity, it was practical knowledge that enabled breathtaking architectural feats. The massive ziggurats, towering step pyramids at the heart of the city, were constructed with stunning accuracy. Vast networks of canals and irrigation channels, engineering marvels in their own right, transformed the arid landscape to support a population of hundreds of thousands. Can you picture the sheer concentration of knowledge in one place? All the astronomical data, the mathematical formulas, the architectural plans, and the medical texts, all stored in vast libraries, forming a single, brilliant beacon of learning. What happens when a beacon that bright is suddenly extinguished? Where does all that light go? That brilliant beacon of knowledge was about to be swallowed by a shadow from the east. The Persian Empire, under the visionary King Cyrus, was rising with an unstoppable force. Cyrus did not command a single nation's army, but a multi-ethnic machine of conquest. His forces included skilled Median cavalry, hardy Persian foot soldiers, and engineers from every corner of his growing domain. This was not just a larger army, it was a new model of power, built on revolutionary logistics and a strategy that blended raw force with cunning diplomacy. While Babylon's rulers focused on their majestic walls and celestial observations, Cyrus was mastering the art of empire. He understood that the greatest walls could be breached not only by ramps and battering rams, but by exploiting discontent within. Babylon was politically fractured, its people weary of their own king, Nabonidus, whose religious policies had alienated the powerful priestly class. Cyrus saw this vulnerability and wielded propaganda as skillfully as his sword. The famous Cyrus cylinder, an ancient clay record, portrays him not as a destroyer but as a liberator, chosen by the Babylonian god Marduk to restore order and tradition. It was a masterstroke of political theater, so when the Persian armies finally arrived at Babylon's immense gates in 539 BCE, they faced a city already divided against itself. The actual takeover was surprisingly bloodless. Historical accounts suggest that Cyrus' engineers diverted the Euphrates River, allowing his special forces to wade through the lowered water levels under the massive river gates. Can you grasp the sheer audacity of that plan? While the city slept or perhaps celebrated a festival, Persian soldiers simply walked into the heart of the empire. The mighty walls, the pride of Babylon, were utterly circumvented. This was more than a military defeat, it was a systemic collapse. The central authority that had curated and protected centuries of knowledge was gone in a single night. But what happens to all that carefully gathered learning when the library's doors are thrown open? Does it simply vanish, or does it begin a new, even more unpredictable journey? The fall of the city did not mean the death of its knowledge. It simply meant that knowledge was set free. With the Persian administration now in control, the tightly woven fabric of Babylonian intellectual life began to unravel. Astronomers who had charted the skies from the tops of ziggurats, mathematicians who calculated celestial motions, and physicians versed in ancient remedies suddenly found their world upended. Many of these scholars and master artisans, whether by force or by choice, packed their most precious belongings, clay tablets filled with data, and the specialized tools of their trades. They began to travel, carrying the accumulated genius of centuries with them into the vast and interconnected Achaemenid Empire. This was not a random scattering, but a great migration of minds. The Persian court and the courts of regional satraps quickly recognized the value of these displaced intellectuals. A Babylonian astronomer could offer a king more accurate calendars for planting and religious festivals. A mathematician could improve the engineering of new roads and aqueducts. A physician might possess a unique recipe for a healing salve. They found new patronage, new resources, and most importantly, new colleagues from different traditions. This was the first crucial consequence of the fall, the forced cross-pollination of ideas on a massive scale. We can trace their influence in very specific, tangible ways. Greek astronomers, for instance, would later adopt and build upon detailed Babylonian star catalogues and their methods for predicting planetary movements. The very names of constellations we use today have roots in this transmission. In the East, early Indian mathematical texts began to show a fascinating familiarity with Babylonian algebraic concepts and their base 60 system, which would eventually influence how we measure time and angles. This was not about one civilization simply copying another. It was a collaborative spark, a Greek thinker looking at a Babylonian clay tablet full of numerical data might ask a new question, approaching the same information from a completely different philosophical angle. How does a brilliant idea change when it is seen through a different cultural lens? It does not weaken, it multiplies. The lone beacon of Babylon had been extinguished, but in its place, 1,000 new sparks were carried on the wind, each one capable of starting its own fire. What happens when those scattered sparks finally find fertile ground? That scattered knowledge found its first and most powerful new home within the very empire that had conquered Babylon. The Persian rulers were brilliant pragmatists, and they recognized a treasure trove when they saw one. It was not just about captured gold or territory. It was about inheriting a fully functional administrative machine. The Babylonians had perfected the art of running a complex state with meticulous record-keeping, standardized weights for fair trade, and detailed census data for collecting taxes. The Persian king Darius I saw the immense potential in these systems. His empire stretched from the edges of India to the coast of Greece, an unimaginably vast and diverse collection of peoples and cultures. How do you govern such a sprawling domain without it fracturing into chaos? The Babylonian model provided the blueprint. Darius did not simply copy these systems. He supercharged them, adapting and scaling them to a degree the Babylonians never had to. He established a universal gold coinage, the Daric, which was accepted from the markets of Sardis to the banks of the Indus River. This was built upon the foundation of Babylonian banking and credit networks, which had already facilitated complex loans and business ventures. Economic historians point out that this financial stability was the bedrock of the empire's prosperity, turning the royal road into not just a path for couriers, but a superhighway for commerce. Can you see the chain reaction? A Babylonian accounting practice designed for a city-state was now being used to manage the budget of a continent-spanning superpower. This integration went even deeper. Darius implemented a version of uniform law inspired by the legal principles of Hammurabi's code to ensure a degree of consistency across his many provinces. He made Aramaic, a language already widely used in Babylonian trade, the official lingua franca of his entire administration. Imperial archives filled with clay tablets and parchment scrolls became the empire's memory, storing everything from tax receipts to reports from distant satraps. A single tablet from Persepolis might record the payment of silver to an Egyptian artist for work on a palace, written in Aramaic by a Phoenician scribe using a Babylonian measurement system. This was the ultimate fusion, a bureaucratic engine that could harness the best ideas from every corner of the empire and apply them on a grand scale. It proves a powerful point that innovation is not always about inventing something brand new. Sometimes the most profound leaps forward happen when you take a proven system and give it a much larger canvas. This administrative machine did not just govern people, it began to connect them, and in doing so, it laid the groundwork for an even more profound exchange, one not of laws and coins, but of raw, world-changing technology. The true power of a shared administrative language was that it let ideas travel faster than ever before, and some of the most valuable ideas were forged in fire. When the Persian Empire absorbed Babylon, it did not just acquire scribes and accountants, it inherited generations of master metalworkers. These artisans possessed closely guarded secrets for creating superior bronze and iron, techniques refined over centuries to produce weapons that held a sharper edge and tools that did not shatter under strain. Suddenly, these specialists were no longer working in isolation. They found themselves alongside Persian craftsmen who brought their own deep expertise, particularly in sourcing ores from vast new mining networks and in building larger, more efficient smelting furnaces. This was a collaboration born from imperial necessity. The empire needed to equip a massive professional army, and that demand broke down the old technological silos. Archaeologists examining artifacts from this period can literally see the fusion happening. A dagger blade might show the distinctive, high-quality steel composition of a Babylonian formula, yet be fitted with a hilt crafted in a Persian artistic style. The result was not just a prettier weapon, but a fundamentally better one. The exchange went far beyond the armory, revolutionizing everyday life. Stronger, more durable iron plowshares allowed farmers to till tougher soil, increasing agricultural yields to feed the growing urban centers that the empire's roads were connecting. This was innovation with a direct, tangible impact on the prosperity of millions. But the most profound collaboration may have happened not in the forges, but underground, in the quest to conquer a much older enemy than any human army, the desert itself. The Persians had developed an ingenious system for tapping groundwater, known as the Qanat. This was a horizontal tunnel that sloped gently from a water source deep beneath the foothills out to the arid plains, bringing life-giving water to the surface without a single drop lost to evaporation. It was a brilliant concept, but its construction required immense precision. A Qanat tunnel that was dug at the wrong angle would either flood or run dry. This is where the forced migration of Babylonian mines proved critical. Babylonian surveyors and mathematicians had spent generations mastering the art of measurement for their canals and monumental architecture. They understood gradients, levels, and geometry with a practical depth that was likely unmatched. When their skills were applied to the Qanat system, the effect was transformative. These long, subterranean aqueducts could now be planned and excavated with a new level of accuracy and on a vastly expanded scale. What was once a local solution became an empire-wide project, bringing water to previously uninhabitable regions and supporting entirely new cities. Can you see the pattern emerging? A Persian water mining technique combined with Babylonian precision engineering created a technological leap that neither civilization could have achieved alone. It makes you wonder, when former rivals are united by a shared challenge, does competition give way to something far more powerful, a shared ingenuity? This spirit of collaborative problem-solving was about to reach for the stars themselves, transforming not just the land, but our very understanding of the cosmos. The night sky became a universal laboratory, its stars a common language for the displaced scholars of Babylon. Their most prized possessions were not jewels, but clay tablets, especially the vast collection known as the Enuma Anu in Lil. These were not myths, but meticulous data logs, recording centuries of lunar eclipses, planetary positions, and celestial omens. When this library was effectively opened to the world, its contents began a journey that would redefine humanity's relationship with the cosmos. The Persian and Greek astronomers who gained access to these records did not see mere lists. They saw patterns spanning generations, patterns that were invisible to any single lifetime of observation. This long-term data was the key to a revolutionary leap, the creation of a truly reliable lunisolar calendar. By combining the Babylonian tracking of the moon's phases with their own solar observations, these collaborative thinkers could now synchronize the lunar month with the solar year. This was not an abstract achievement. It meant farmers across the empire knew the precise, optimal time for planting and harvest. It meant religious festivals could be scheduled with unwavering certainty. It meant sailors could navigate open waters with greater confidence, using stars whose movements were now predictable years in advance. One brilliant mind stood at the center of this transmission, a Babylonian astronomer named Qanat. Working in the centuries after the Persian conquest, he refined the existing data into breathtakingly accurate models. He calculated the length of the solar year to within just a few minutes of its true value. His work on predicting the motions of the moon and planets was so advanced that it directly influenced the great Greek astronomers like Hipparchus and later Ptolemy in his monumental work, the Almagest. The very concept of the Zodiac, that band of constellations through which the sun and planets travel, was formalized and passed down from Babylonian origins, becoming a fundamental tool for both science and storytelling. Historians of science point to this moment as a critical juncture where the fall of a political center did not destroy its knowledge, but instead democratized it. When a single library controls all the data, progress is limited to the questions its keepers choose to ask. But when that data is scattered, it falls into the hands of new thinkers with entirely different perspectives. A Greek philosopher looking at the same eclipse cycle a Babylonian priest recorded for divination might instead ask a question about geometry and celestial mechanics. How does a system of knowledge evolve when it is no longer curated by a single authority? It becomes resilient, adaptable, and far more powerful. The collaborative astronomy that emerged from Babylon's fall gave the ancient world a new, predictive power over time itself. And this mastery of cycles and prediction was built upon a hidden foundation, a mathematical language that was about to be reborn in a new form, unleashing a revolution in logic and abstract thought. The same mathematical language that predicted the stars began to reshape the very ground beneath our feet. In marketplaces from Egypt to India, a quiet revolution was taking place, not with grand pronouncements, but on the clay tablets and papyrus scrolls of accountants and land surveyors. They were adopting the Babylonian base 60 or sexagesimal system, and the reason was pure practical genius. Unlike our base 10 system, 60 is beautifully divisible by 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12, 15, 20, and 30. This made calculating fractions a constant headache for dividing inheritances or measuring plots of land remarkably simple. An Egyptian official dividing a grain shipment or an Indian architect calculating the angle for a temple wall found that this borrowed system saved time and reduced errors dramatically. It was a tool that just worked. This was not merely about counting. The Babylonians had developed sophisticated problem-solving techniques that traveled with their number system. Surviving tablets like the famous Plimpton 322 reveal that they understood the principles of what we now call the Pythagorean theorem over 1,000 years before Pythagoras was born. They used early algebraic methods to solve for unknown quantities, framing questions like, "I found a stone but did not weigh it. After I added a seventh of its weight and then an 11th of that new total, the result was 1 mina." What was the original weight? Their step-by-step solutions show a logical, abstract way of thinking about numbers that was revolutionary. These were not just recipes for specific problems, but transferable frameworks for reasoning. The most visible legacies of this system are all around us, embedded in the very fabric of time and space. Look at a clock. Why 60 seconds in a minute and 60 minutes in an hour? That is the direct, unbroken lineage of Babylonian celestial calculations. Look at a protractor. Why 360 degrees in a circle? The Babylonians, with their base 60 system, logically divided the circle into 360 units, a convention that Greek astronomers like Hipparchus eagerly adopted and passed down to us. Hipparchus did not invent trigonometry from nothing. He refined it using the numerical foundation the Babylonians had perfected. He built his table of chords, a precursor to the sine function, upon the bedrock of their precise angular measurements and astronomical data. Can you see how a unified mathematical language can unite disparate fields of innovation? A system developed for tracking the heavens could now be used to split an inheritance fairly, plan a city's irrigation network, and chart a ship's course across the sea. It created a common toolkit for the ancient world's engineers, astronomers, and merchants. This shared foundation meant that a breakthrough in one corner of the empire could be understood and applied in another, accelerating progress everywhere. And just as these precise calculations were transforming the world outside, a different kind of Babylonian knowledge, written in recipes of herbs and minerals, was beginning to transform the world within the human body. A patient's fever in Babylon was not just a symptom, it was a message. Their diagnostic handbook, a vast compilation of medical knowledge, taught physicians to read these messages in the body, meticulously linking specific symptoms to probable outcomes and prescribing detailed herbal remedies. This was a systematic approach to medicine, a stark contrast to the more philosophical and theoretical traditions emerging in Greece. When the empire fell, these clay tablets filled with practical, tested knowledge began to circulate along the very trade routes that now connected Persia to the Mediterranean. A Greek physician trained to ponder the balance of the four humours might now hold a Babylonian text that offered a specific poultice for a wound that would not heal, made from ingredients like myrrh and cedar resin. The exchange was transformative. Medical historians note that Greek doctors began to adopt a more empirical, observation-based approach, blending their own theories with the hard-won clinical experience of the Babylonians. Surgical techniques improved as well, with Greek texts later describing procedures for cataracts and bone setting that show a clear debt to Mesopotamian precedents. This was not a one-way street. Persian physicians brought their own deep expertise in pharmacology, possessing an extensive knowledge of minerals and complex compound drugs. They acted as the perfect bridge, merging the Babylonian focus on plant-based cures with their own sophisticated chemistry. The result was the birth of a new, more powerful pharmacopoeia. A simple remedy for a stomach ailment might evolve from a single Babylonian herb into a complex Persian preparation, combining that same herb with saffron and boiled wine to enhance its potency and preservation. Can you see how a dialogue between these different medical traditions could save lives that a single approach might have lost? This cross-cultural collaboration meant that a traveling doctor's bag now contained a wider array of tools, both intellectual and practical. The Greek medical giant Galen, writing centuries later, would still be referencing treatments and substances that can be traced directly back to these Mesopotamian origins. A recipe for a healing salve recorded on a cuneiform tablet in Babylon could, through a long chain of transmission and refinement, end up soothing a Roman soldier's wounds. This demonstrates a profound truth about knowledge, that when healing is the goal, the origin of a good idea matters far less than its effect. And just as this blended medical wisdom was healing human bodies, another fusion of Babylonian and Persian genius was reshaping the very bodies of cities, constructing urban landscapes on a scale the world had never seen. The grandest buildings of the Persian Empire tell a story not of conquest but of creative fusion. At the heart of the ceremonial capital, Persepolis, rose the magnificent Apadana Palace, a structure that could never have been conceived by Persian or Babylonian architects alone. Its foundation was pure Babylonian genius, a mastery of baked brick and vaulted ceilings perfected over centuries in the humid Mesopotamian plain. Yet its soul was Persian, expressed through soaring, slender columns and open-sided halls designed for the crisp, mountainous air of the Iranian plateau. This was not mere imitation, it was architectural alchemy. Persian builders took the robust, load-bearing techniques of Babylon and adapted them on a breathtaking scale, creating columned halls so vast they seemed to defy gravity, all while decorating the stone capitals with intricate carvings of lions and bulls, an artistic signature from their own homeland. This blending of styles produced structures that were not only majestic but remarkably resilient, capable of withstanding the seismic shifts and diverse climates of a vast empire. Archaeologists examining the ruins can pinpoint the moment of synthesis, where a wall's core is made of classic Babylonian mud brick, while its facade is faced with finely cut Persian limestone. This collaborative spirit extended beyond palaces to reshape entire cities. The Persian Empire became a laboratory for urban planning, adopting the grid-like street layouts and sophisticated sewage systems that had made Babylon such a marvel of public health. But they improved upon them, integrating these features with their own understanding of water management through Qanats, ensuring new cities were not only well-ordered, but sustainably supplied with fresh water. Can you see how a single city's collapse provided the blueprint for an entire empire's urban landscape? The architectural language developed in this fusion did not die with Persia. It was borrowed and refined by the Greeks after Alexander, and later became a core ingredient in the monumental civic architecture of Rome. When you walk through the ruins of a Roman forum, you are, in a way, seeing a distant echo of Babylon, filtered through Persian innovation and Greek artistry. This shared vocabulary of stone and space was made possible by another, even more fundamental fusion happening not in the quarries, but in the mouths of merchants and the pens of scribes, a quiet revolution in language itself. The words that once recorded grain shipments in Babylon now dictated laws across an empire. Aramaic, the administrative language of the fallen kingdom, did not disappear with its conquerors. Instead, the Persian Empire recognized its power and made it the official tongue of diplomacy and trade, a linguistic thread stitching together cultures from the Mediterranean Sea to the Indus River. This was not about replacing local languages, but about creating a shared channel for communication, a common operating system for the ancient world. The Aramaic script was brilliantly simple, an alphabet of just 22 consonants that was far easier to learn and write than the complex cuneiform of Mesopotamia or the hieroglyphs of Egypt. A merchant from Phoenicia could now draft a contract that a tax official in Bactria could read. A royal decree issued in Persepolis could be understood in the markets of Egypt without a team of translators. This linguistic unification was the invisible infrastructure that made every other form of exchange possible. Linguists point to the sheer adaptability of Aramaic, how its script was adopted to write a dozen different languages, from Hebrew to Persian itself, preserving everything from biblical books to Zoroastrian hymns. The evidence is chiseled into stone on royal monuments and stamped onto countless coins, the symbols of a unified economic and political space. Can you grasp how a single shared language accelerates the pace of everything? A medical recipe from Babylon, written in Aramaic on a lightweight scroll, could travel 1,000 miles and be understood immediately by a Greek doctor, who might then add his own notes and send it further along. A mathematical theorem no longer needed to be deciphered from 1,000 cryptic cuneiform wedges. It could be expressed in a clear, alphabetic script that encouraged new questions and faster refinements. When knowledge is locked in a difficult, localized language, it moves slowly like a river trapped behind a dam. But when that dam is broken, ideas flow freely, merging and evolving as they go. This great river of shared words and concepts did not just carry poetry and prayers, it carried the very blueprints for commerce, creating an economic environment so stable and so interconnected that it could fund the next great age of discovery. This economic stability was not built on empty promises, but on the solid foundation of gold and silver. The Persian Daric, a pure gold coin stamped with the image of the king as an archer, became the world's first internationally recognized currency. Before its introduction, a merchant from Greece trading with a merchant from India faced a labyrinth of barter and unreliable local coinages. How many bolts of linen equal one sack of pepper? The Daric changed everything. It was a universal token of value, trusted from the Nile to the Indus River because it was backed by the full authority of the empire. An economic historian would point out that this single innovation did more than just simplify trade. It built a system of trust. A farmer in Anatolia could now be paid in Darics for his olive oil, confident that those same coins could be used to purchase grain in Egypt. This predictability encouraged investment and long-distance ventures that were previously unthinkable. The Daric was the spark, but the fuel for this economic engine came directly from Babylonian accounting. Persian administrators inherited and perfected meticulous record-keeping systems, using clay tablets to track every tax receipt and customs duty across the empire's vast territories. We can see this in surviving records that detail the flow of commodities, like Lebanese cedar wood shipped to Persia for palace construction, or Indian spices arriving in Babylonian markets. This bureaucratic oversight ensured that wealth flowed efficiently to the imperial center, funding the roads and security that made such trade possible in the first place. These were not just dirt paths, but carefully maintained highways like the Royal Road, patrolled by soldiers and dotted with way stations where couriers could change horses, allowing goods and information to travel with unprecedented speed. It was the precursor to the Silk Road, a network that connected the world. Can you see how this financial and logistical framework created a petri dish for innovation? When a merchant's profits are secure and his trade routes are safe, he is far more likely to fund an experimental new loom or a more efficient design for a cargo ship. Economic stability does not just create comfort, it creates the freedom to take risks. And in the shadow of these thriving marketplaces, surrounded by the wealth of a connected world, a new kind of luxury began to flourish, one that wove together the artistic souls of conquered and conqueror alike. These artisans carried more than tools, they carried entire visual languages into the heart of the Persian Empire. A Babylonian jeweler, trained for generations in the art of intricate gold filigree and the vibrant use of lapis lazuli, would now find himself working alongside a Persian metalsmith who specialized in bold, sculptural forms depicting griffins and lions. They did not simply work in the same room, they began to speak to each other through their craft. The result was a new artistic dialect, a hybrid style where the delicate, repeating patterns of Mesopotamian art intertwined with the powerful, symbolic creatures of Persian imperial identity. We can see this fusion preserved in stunning artifacts like the Oxus treasure, a collection of Achaemenid gold. A single armlet might feature the robust form of a winged lion, a quintessential Persian symbol of royal power, yet its entire body is covered in the minute, feathery texture of Babylonian granulation, a technique where tiny spheres of gold are fused to a surface to create a shimmering effect. This was not a compromise, it was an enhancement, a celebration of multiple traditions in a single, breathtaking object. Art historians point to this moment as a revolution in visual culture, where the old boundaries of style began to dissolve in the imperial workshops. The exchange was profoundly technical as well. Babylonian potters had long struggled with achieving a consistent, brilliant glaze on their ceramics. Persian artisans, drawing on their deep knowledge of minerals and higher temperature kilns, helped perfect new glazing formulas. The outcome was a spectrum of colors previously unseen, from deep cobalt blues to vibrant turquoise greens, which soon adorned everything from royal tableware to architectural tiles. Can you see how a shared workshop became a laboratory for material science? This artistic collaboration was not confined to luxury items for the elite. The influence rippled outward, shaping the aesthetic of the entire ancient world. Greek vase painters, encountering these new hybrid objects through trade, began to incorporate Eastern motifs into their own work. The famous Orientalizing period in Greek art is marked by the sudden appearance of sphinxes, griffins, and intricate floral patterns, all themes filtered through the Persian fusion of Mesopotamian and their own styles. A Greek statue from this era might stand with a new, more naturalistic grace, but its drapery could be carved with patterns that echo the textures of Babylonian textiles. How does artistic collaboration reflect a deeper societal shift? When a craftsman borrows a motif from a foreign tradition, he is not just decorating an object, he is acknowledging a shared human creativity. This fusion in the tangible world, in the gold we can hold and the pots we can touch, was a silent, powerful argument for the value of connection over isolation. And just as these hands were shaping a new visual reality, other minds were beginning to blend a different, even more profound material, the very nature of truth and wisdom. These profound questions of existence began to echo through the intellectual marketplaces of the ancient world. The collapse of Babylon's political structure did not destroy its spiritual and philosophical foundations. Instead, it released them into a vibrant current of competing ideas. The great Babylonian creation epic, the Enuma Elish, with its cosmic struggle between order and chaos, now traveled beyond the temples where it was once recited. It encountered the emerging Zoroastrian vision of a universe defined by a fundamental duality, a perpetual battle between a supreme god of light, Ahura Mazda, and a destructive spirit of falsehood, Angra Mainyu. This was not a simple clash, but a fertile collision. Suddenly, the old Mesopotamian stories were being heard by Persian priests and Greek thinkers who asked entirely new kinds of questions. They were less interested in which god had conquered the sea monster, and more concerned with the underlying principles these myths might represent. Was the struggle between Marduk and Tiamat merely a story, or was it a metaphor for the eternal conflict between structure and formlessness, between reason and the primordial void? This cross-pollination sparked a revolution in thought, shifting the focus from narrative to underlying cosmic law. Scholars of ancient religion trace how Zoroastrian dualism, with its clear ethical framework of good versus evil, began to infuse and reinterpret older Babylonian astral theology, where the planets were seen as divine wills. The stars were no longer just gods sending omens. They became part of a vast, orderly cosmic battlefield between light and darkness. This syncretic belief system, a blend of Mesopotamian astronomy and Persian theology, would later provide a crucial intellectual framework for everything from Jewish apocalyptic literature to certain strands of Greek philosophy. How does a story change when it is told in a new land to an audience that hears a different truth in its words? It does not vanish, it transforms, acquiring new layers of meaning that can resonate for millennia. This transformation was most dramatic in the realm of prediction and knowledge itself. The Babylonian art of divination, the meticulous reading of animal livers and celestial patterns for signs from the gods, was a form of state-sponsored science. But when these practices dispersed, they evolved. In the hands of Greek thinkers, the obsessive cataloging of celestial omens began a subtle shift. The question slowly changed from "what is the god trying to tell us with this eclipse?" to "what consistent, predictable rules govern the motion that causes this eclipse?" The data remained the same, but the framework for interpreting it was fundamentally altered. This was the birth of a more systematic form of inquiry, one that sought natural causes rather than divine whims. We can see this intellectual evolution embodied in figures like Heraclitus of Ephesus, a Greek city deeply enmeshed in the cultural currents of the Persian Empire. His famous doctrine that all things are in a state of perpetual flux, that you cannot step into the same river twice, echoes the ancient Mesopotamian reverence for the flow and change of time, yet it strips away the personal deities. He replaced the capricious will of the gods with a single, unifying principle, the logos, a kind of divine reason governing the cosmos. This was not an idea that could have sprung fully formed from a purely Greek context. It bears the marks of a mind grappling with the vast, cyclical time of Babylonian astronomy and the cosmic moral struggle of Zoroastrian thought. Other pre-Socratic philosophers like Thales, who famously predicted a solar eclipse, were almost certainly working with astronomical data and methods that originated in Mesopotamia. The fusion was creating a new type of thinker, one who looked at the shared cultural inheritance of myths and data and dared to seek a rational, underlying unity. The evidence of this blending is etched into the very language of prophecy and law from the era. Later Jewish texts composed during and after the Babylonian exile show a clear familiarity with Mesopotamian mythic motifs, like the Great Flood, yet they often reinterpret them within a more strongly dualistic and monotheistic framework, influenced by contact with Persian ideas. A shared motif, such as a symbolic tree representing divine knowledge or kingship, appears in Babylonian cylinder seals, in the biblical book of Daniel, and in Zoroastrian symbolism, but each culture weaves it into its own unique theological tapestry. This was not plagiarism, it was a profound intellectual dialogue happening across empires and generations. When diverse worldviews collide, they do not always destroy each other, they can fertilize, creating hybrid systems of thought that are more resilient and more sophisticated than their parent traditions. The great debates about the fundamental nature of reality, about the conflict between good and evil, about the order of the cosmos, were all enriched by the forced migration of Babylonian ideas. This philosophical alchemy, turning myth into reasoned inquiry, was quietly building the foundation for a new kind of societal structure, one where the laws that governed men were meant to reflect the same rational order they were discovering in the stars. The very clay that recorded grain debts in Babylon now began to dictate justice across an empire. Persian rulers, faced with the monumental task of governing dozens of distinct cultures, recognized the profound utility of Hammurabi's code. Its core principle of proportional justice, the idea that a punishment should match the severity of the offense, offered a powerful tool for creating a predictable legal environment. This was not about imposing one people's laws on everyone else, but about establishing a universal framework for fairness that could reduce tribal conflicts and build trust in the imperial system. A legal historian might describe this as the birth of a true administrative rule of law, where the king's authority was expressed through consistent, written statutes rather than just the whims of local governors. The Persians adapted the Babylonian model brilliantly, creating a network of imperial judges known as the king's ears, who traveled the royal roads to hear cases and ensure that the law was applied with a degree of uniformity from Egypt to India. For the first time, a merchant from Lydia could enter a contract with a partner in Bactria, and both could be reasonably confident that the same legal principles would protect their agreement. This system even introduced early forms of appeal, where a verdict from a local court could be reviewed by a higher imperial authority. Can you see how this legal predictability was just as important as a stable currency? When people know that their property rights will be honored and their disputes resolved fairly, they are far more likely to invest in a new business, to fund a trading voyage, or to experiment with a new craft. The rule of law does not just prevent chaos, it actively encourages the kind of risk-taking that fuels innovation. This framework was built from very specific, practical clauses that we can still read today. Court records on clay tablets from the Persian era show the direct adoption of Babylonian legal concepts, particularly concerning debt and inheritance. A typical tablet might record a case where a farmer, unable to pay a loan, is granted protection from indefinite servitude under a Persian version of debt release laws inspired by Babylonian precedents. Another might detail the fair division of an estate among multiple heirs, using formulas for shares that would have been familiar to any scribe from ancient Babylon. These were not abstract ideals, they were working mechanisms that prevented the kind of social collapse that can follow from widespread debt slavery or inheritance disputes. By providing a clear, written path for resolving the most common and volatile human conflicts, this blended legal system created a bedrock of social stability. It allowed the energy that might have been spent on feuds or survival to be redirected toward building, trading, and discovering. And this very stability, this protection of property and person, was about to find its ultimate expression not in a courtroom, but in a field where a new security for farmers would unlock a revolution in what the land could provide. The stability of law and a shared currency created the perfect conditions for an agricultural revolution. Across the vast, arid plains of the Persian Empire, the most critical resource was not gold but water. Babylonian engineers had mastered this challenge for centuries, building intricate canal networks that snaked through the landscape, diverting the lifeblood of the Euphrates to fields of barley and wheat. Their most ingenious tool was the shaduf, a simple yet brilliant counterweight lever that allowed a single farmer to lift heavy buckets of water from a canal, and pour them into an irrigation ditch with minimal effort. But these were often local solutions. The Persian administration, with its talent for large-scale organization, saw the potential for something far grander. They took the Babylonian blueprint for canal building and deployed it across entire provinces, using imperial resources and labor to dig longer, deeper, and more strategically placed waterways. This was no longer just about watering a city-state, it was about feeding a continent. The Persian Qanat system, those underground water mines, now fed directly into these surface canals, creating a dual layer of water security that could withstand droughts and seasonal shifts. An agricultural historian would point to the surviving administrative records that detail the allocation of vast quantities of bitumen, a natural tar, for lining these new canals to prevent precious water from seeping into the thirsty ground. Can you grasp the significance of that single detail? An empire was investing in waterproofing its farmland. The result was a dramatic expansion of arable land. Regions that had once been marginal for farming were now transformed into fertile breadbaskets, capable of supporting not just local villages, but the growing urban populations that the empire's roads and markets were connecting. This was not the only exchange happening in the fields. Persian administrators, constantly moving between provinces, facilitated the spread of new crop varieties. The prized date palm, a staple of Babylonian orchards, was introduced to new lands in Egypt and the Levant, while drought-resistant grains from the Persian highlands were planted in Mesopotamian soil. Farmers began to experiment with more complex crop rotation practices, learning that alternating legumes like lentils with cereal grains could naturally replenish the soil's nitrogen, leading to stronger yields year after year. The tools of the farmer evolved as well. The basic Babylonian plow was a wooden ard, good for scratching the soft alluvial soil of the river valleys. But Persian metalworkers, with their superior iron, began to produce stronger, iron-tipped plowshares. These new tools could cut through the tougher, drier soils of the imperial hinterlands, turning over the earth more effectively and bringing deeper nutrients to the surface. This single innovation alone would have increased crop yields dramatically, and with more food came the need for better storage. The Babylonians had used massive, airtight clay silos buried in the ground to protect their grain from pests and rot. The Persians scaled this concept up, building vast, centralized granaries at key administrative centers. These were the ancient equivalent of strategic reserves, buffers against famine that could be distributed along the royal road in times of shortage. How does a food surplus change a society? It is the fundamental enabler of everything else. When a community no longer needs every single member to work the land simply to survive, people are freed to specialize. One person can become a full-time metalworker, experimenting with new alloys. Another can dedicate their life to astronomy, charting the stars without fear of hunger. A third can train as a soldier, mastering new forms of combat and equipment. This agricultural abundance, born from the fusion of Babylonian technique and Persian scale, did not just fill stomachs. It built the specialized, complex society that could then turn its collective mind to the next great challenge, the art of war. The same fields that now grew surplus grain would soon train the armies that needed to protect it. The very fields that now grew surplus grain began to train the armies that would protect it. A new kind of military machine was taking shape, one forged from the forced partnership of Persian ambition and Babylonian engineering. The Persian army, already legendary for its elite cavalry and swift-moving infantry, gained a terrifying new dimension with the tools inherited from Babylon's fallen workshops. The most formidable of these were the siege engines. Before the conquest, Persian tactics often relied on blockade or assault to overcome fortified cities, a slow and costly process. Now they possessed the Babylonian battering ram, a masterpiece of destructive engineering. This was not a simple log, but a mobile, roofed structure mounted on wheels, its massive iron-tipped head suspended by chains within a protective canopy that shielded the operators from arrows and burning oil. Military historians point to the rapid adoption of these machines, noting how Persian logistical genius scaled their production, using standardized parts that could be assembled quickly across the empire. Alongside the rams came the siege tower, another Babylonian innovation that the Persians refined into a true mobile fortress. These multi-story wooden giants, armored with wet hides to resist fire, could be rolled against the tallest walls, allowing archers to rain down suppressing fire while soldiers deployed bridges to storm the battlements. The synthesis did not stop with machinery. Persian commanders began to integrate Babylonian principles of fortification into their own defensive architecture. They studied the sheer, towering walls of Babylon, analyzing the strategic use of glacis, those sloping earthen ramps at the base that prevented enemy rams from getting a solid purchase. A Persian garrison fort on the empire's frontier might now feature the deep, rubble-filled foundations of a Babylonian wall, combined with the more open, easily defensible layout preferred by Persian military planners. This hybrid design was more resilient and adaptable to different terrains. Can you see how the tools of conquest were themselves a product of collaboration? The evidence for this fusion is not just in ancient texts but buried in the ground. Archaeologists excavating sites of Persian military conquests have unearthed arrowheads that tell a silent story. Some are typically Persian, with three flanged edges designed for piercing armor. Others are distinctly Babylonian, with a broader, leaf-shaped blade meant to inflict terrible wounds on unarmored troops. And then there are the hybrids, arrows that combine the penetrating power of the Persian design with the cutting surface of the Babylonian one. A single quiver might have contained all three, a testament to an army that was pragmatically blending the best technologies available. This cross-pollination in military technology had a curious side effect. It drove peacetime innovation. The same engineers who designed a more efficient counterweight system for a siege tower might apply that principle to a new type of construction crane. The standardized production of chariot axles in imperial workshops could lead to improvements in the axles of merchant wagons. When the goal is survival and victory, the search for a better solution becomes relentless, and those solutions rarely stay confined to the battlefield for long. The knowledge of how to build, how to break, and how to protect became a circulating currency of its own, demanding new ways to be recorded, taught, and advanced. The knowledge now flowing across empires needed a new kind of home. Deep within the administrative heart of the Persian state, the Babylonian model of the Adaba, the tablet house, was being reborn on an imperial scale. These were no longer just schools for training local scribes to record temple offerings. They became the crucial engines for producing a multilingual, scientifically literate bureaucracy capable of running a continent. The curriculum was demanding and profoundly practical. A student, perhaps the son of a displaced Babylonian scholar or a bright Persian noble, would spend years mastering not one, but multiple languages, primarily Aramaic for administration, and often the local tongue of his assigned province. His days were filled with the repetitive but vital practice of pressing cuneiform signs into damp clay tablets, or more commonly now, mastering the quicker Aramaic alphabet with ink on parchment or papyrus. But this was far more than penmanship. He would be drilled in the complex mathematics of Babylonian algebra to calculate interest on loans or the volume of a grain silo. He would study astronomy to understand the calendar and help predict seasonal floods. He would copy and memorize literary texts, legal codes, and medical manuals, becoming a living repository of the empire's fused knowledge. Educational historians point to these institutions as the ancient world's first attempt at standardized higher education. The very act of copying a text like the diagnostic handbook or a mathematical problem tablet in these schools meant that knowledge was not just preserved, it was systematically reproduced and distributed, creating a consistent intellectual foundation from Egypt to India. The teachers and students themselves became a network. A scribble family from Babylon might find its members teaching in schools in Susa, Ecbatana, and even as far afield as the Greek cities of Ionia, carrying their specialized knowledge with them and blending it with local traditions. Can you see how a standardized education system acts as a stabilizer for innovation? It does not just pass on what is known, it creates a common language and a shared set of tools that allows the next generation to build upon a stable foundation, rather than starting from scratch. The graduates of these schools were the ones who would go on to draft the laws, manage the trade, and design the infrastructure that held the empire together. They were the human nodes in a vast web of information, and their training ensured that a breakthrough in one corner of the web could be understood and applied in another. This interconnected world of scribes and scholars, all speaking a similar intellectual language, was about to make its greatest leap yet, not by land but by sea, where new maritime technologies would weave the web even tighter. The same administrative networks that moved laws and grain now began to master the sea. Babylonian astronomers, long accustomed to mapping the fixed paths of stars from their stable river plains, found their celestial knowledge in high demand on the rolling decks of Persian ships. Their most vital tool was the gnomon, a simple vertical rod that cast a shadow whose length and direction could tell a sailor not only the time of day but, with the right calculations, his approximate latitude. This was knowledge born from temple observatories, now repurposed to guide trade galleys across the treacherous waters of the Persian Gulf. Maritime archaeologists point to shipwrecks from this era that reveal a fascinating synthesis. The hulls show a distinct improvement, combining the robust, deep keel design of Persian shipwrights, built to withstand the open ocean, with the Babylonian use of bitumen for waterproofing the seams, a technique perfected on their river barges. The result was a vessel that was both seaworthy and remarkably leak-resistant, capable of carrying heavier cargoes on longer voyages. The sails evolved too, moving from a single large square rig to a more versatile combination of sails that could better catch shifting winds, an innovation born from the need to traverse diverse sea routes. Can you grasp the significance of a ship that no longer had to hug the coast? It could strike out across open water, cutting journey times from weeks to days and opening up direct trade between civilizations. The logs of these voyages, some preserved on clay tablets, began to evolve into early portolan maps, detailed charts that noted not just coastal landmarks, but also sailing directions based on star positions, a direct gift from Babylonian sky watchers to the navigators of a new age. This maritime network became a superhighway for more than just goods. It carried the very seeds of industry. Alongside the cedar timber from Lebanon and the spices from India, these sturdier ships now transported vast quantities of raw materials, including dyes and exotic fibers. The same holds that carried cinnamon and peppercorns could also carry the knowledge of advanced loom technology and intricate dyeing techniques from one workshop to another. How does the ability to move bulky cargo safely across open water change an economy? It does not just increase wealth, it enables the specialization of entire regions, creating an interconnected system where the fabric of one culture could literally be woven into the cloth of another. The vibrant colors of a Babylonian textile were a secret written in plants and minerals. Master dyers knew that madder root produced a brilliant red, while carefully fermented indigo leaves yielded a deep, enduring blue. Their weavers operated complex looms, creating fabrics adorned with intricate patterns of rosettes and mythical beasts that were the envy of the ancient world. When the empire fell, these artisans, like the astronomers and mathematicians, found their skills were a valuable currency in a new, interconnected marketplace. They brought their recipes and techniques to Persian workshops, where a different artistic sensibility awaited. The Persians excelled in weaving luxurious woolens and in the art of storytelling through symbols. The collaboration was explosive. A single piece of fabric could now tell a richer story than ever before, woven on a new, hybrid loom that combined Babylonian precision with Persian scale. Textile historians point to the emergence of complex brocades, where shimmering threads of gold and silver were woven into the wool, creating a raised, pictorial effect that depicted scenes of the royal hunt or Zoroastrian symbols. This was more than decoration, it was wearable wealth and power. The pursuit of color reached new heights, particularly with the legendary Tyrian purple. This was not a single color, but a spectrum from deep crimson to a rich violet, extracted through a horrifically smelly and incredibly labor-intensive process involving thousands of murex sea snails. The secret of its production, long guarded by Phoenician dyers, now circulated within the imperial network, and its value was astronomical. A single pound of dyed purple wool could cost more than most people earned in a year, making it the ultimate status symbol from the palaces of Persepolis to the forums of Rome. Can you grasp how the desire for a single color could fuel an entire industry of divers, dyers, and merchants? The economic impact of this textile revolution was profound. Cities that housed major workshops like Sidon and Babylon itself became industrial powerhouses, their economies powered by the clatter of looms and the vats of simmering dyes. The trade in these luxury fabrics created immense fortunes, which in turn funded public works, art, and further innovation. Preserved fragments from royal tombs show this fusion in stunning detail. A scrap of fabric woven with a distinctly Babylonian geometric border, framing a central panel of Persian griffins. How does the human hunger for beauty and status drive technology forward? The answer is written in every thread, in every quest for a more vibrant color or a more complex pattern. This relentless refinement was not confined to cloth. It was happening simultaneously in the very clay beneath the artisan's feet, where the humble pot was becoming a canvas for a new chemical science. The humble clay pot became a vessel for an entire cultural conversation. Babylonian artisans had perfected the art of the kiln, building ovens that could reach and maintain the high temperatures needed to transform soft clay into hard, durable ceramic. Their glazes, however, were often matte and prone to flaking, a persistent technical challenge. When these potters intersected with Persian craftsmen, who possessed a brilliant understanding of minerals and a love for bold, sculptural forms, the experiments began. Persian artists introduced the use of lead as a flux in glazes, a revolutionary additive that lowered the melting point of the silica, allowing the glaze to flow smoothly and evenly over the surface of the pot during firing. The result was a glossy, impermeable coating that sealed the clay beneath in a jewel-like finish, available in a new spectrum of colors from brilliant cobalt blues to vibrant emerald greens. Ceramologists studying sherds from this period can pinpoint the moment of fusion, where a classic Babylonian storage jar shape is suddenly covered in a flawless turquoise glaze and adorned with the repeating lotus petal motif of Persian court art. This was not merely a new aesthetic, it was a fundamental improvement in the object's utility. A water jar sealed with this new glaze would not seep, and a storage pot for grain would be completely protected from moisture and pests. How does a simple improvement in a kitchen pot ripple through a society? It means food stays safer longer, trade in liquids like oil and wine becomes more practical over long distances, and even the most common household item can carry a touch of beauty and cultural identity. The exchange extended to the very form of the vessels themselves. The Greek amphora, with its elegant, tapered base and two handles, became a standard container for shipping wine across the empire, its shape optimized for stacking in the holds of the new, sturdy ships. The Persian rhyton, a ceremonial drinking horn often shaped like the head of a lion or griffin, was now produced with the refined, glossy glazes of the Babylonian workshops, turning a ritual object into a breathtaking work of art. Archaeological finds from sites like Susa show warehouses filled with these hybrid ceramics, their styles so blended that it is often impossible to label them as purely one culture or another. A single drinking cup might be thrown on a fast wheel using a Babylonian technique, decorated with a Persian mythical beast, and sealed with a lead-based glaze whose formula was a closely guarded secret of an imperial workshop. The trade in these ceramic goods did more than move objects, it carried symbols. A merchant selling a beautifully glazed plate in a foreign market was not just selling a piece of pottery, he was displaying a griffin or a winged sun disk, introducing the artistic vocabulary of one culture to the people of another. When you share the tools of daily life, are you not also sharing a piece of your story? This relentless refinement of craft, of turning everyday objects into both works of art and marvels of practical science, created a world that was not only more connected, but more delightful to live in. And just as these hands were shaping clay, other minds were beginning to shape sound, composing a new soundscape for a fused civilization. The haunting melodies of the Babylonian lyre did not fade with the empire's political collapse, they simply found new ears and new hands to play them. Displaced musicians and the master craftsmen who built their intricate instruments became prized assets in the courts of Persian satraps and kings. A Babylonian harpist trained in the complex, modal scales of the Euphrates Valley would now perform alongside a Persian musician specializing in the powerful, rhythmic drones of the long trumpet and the frame drum. This was not just two groups playing in the same hall. It was a fusion that created an entirely new soundscape for imperial ceremonies and public festivals. Music historians point to the technical evidence preserved in stone on the magnificent reliefs at Persepolis. These carvings show orchestras featuring the angular Babylonian harp alongside the distinctly Persian long-necked lute, all playing together. The very posture of the musicians changed, showing a new, more expressive style of performance that blended Babylonian formality with Persian dynamism. The most profound innovation happened in the workshop. Babylonian luthiers, the makers of stringed instruments, had perfected techniques for crafting sound boxes from resonant woods like cedar, which gave their harps a warm, sustaining tone. Persian artisans contributed their mastery of metalworking, introducing stronger, more durable tuning pegs and strings made from sheep gut that could be tuned to higher tensions, producing a brighter, more penetrating sound. This collaboration led to the creation of entirely new instruments, like the santur. This ancestor of the dulcimer likely emerged from placing Babylonian string concepts onto a Persian zither-like frame, with strings stretched over bridges and struck with lightweight hammers, creating a shimmering, percussive melody that could fill a vast throne room. Can you hear the evolution in that single instrument? The blend of plucked string tradition with a new hammered technique. The blending extended to the very structure of the music itself. The Babylonian system of musical modes, which gave each scale a specific emotional character, began to merge with Persian rhythmic cycles, creating compositions of greater complexity and narrative power. A single piece could now evoke the sorrow of a lost homeland through a Babylonian melodic line, while a driving Persian drum pattern underscored the triumphant march of a new empire. This new hybrid music did not stay in the palaces. It traveled along the royal road with merchants and diplomats, entertaining diverse audiences in Greek symposiums and Indian markets, carrying a sonic imprint of cultural fusion. When art and technology intertwine in this way, they create a shared emotional language that can cross any border. The challenge then became how to record these intricate new compositions, to preserve them not just in memory, but in a permanent form that could be taught and shared, a challenge that would push the ancient world's scribes to develop ever more flexible ways to write. The wedge-shaped marks pressed into wet clay were a language of power and memory. Cuneiform script, the writing system of Babylon, was a complex art, requiring years of mastery to learn its hundreds of signs. But as the Persian Empire rose, this intricate script began a slow retreat from the marketplace and the administrative office, though its legacy was far from over. You can see its final, magnificent echo carved into the face of a mountain in western Iran. The Behistun inscription, commissioned by King Darius I, is a massive triumphal text that proclaims the king's victories in 3 different languages. 2 of those scripts are cuneiform, Old Persian and Elamite, a direct and powerful tribute to the administrative technology of the fallen empires. It was a script fit for gods and kings, etched into stone for eternity. Yet for the daily work of governing a vast empire, for recording a tax receipt in Egypt or a business contract in Bactria, cuneiform was simply too slow, too cumbersome. The future of writing was not in clay, but in ink. Aramaic script, with its simple alphabet of just 22 consonants, was faster to learn and dramatically faster to write. A scribe could take a reed pen, dip it in ink made from soot and gum, and swiftly write on a new, lightweight medium, parchment, which was made from stretched and scraped animal skin, or on papyrus, a paper-like material from Egypt. This was a revolution in information technology. Paleographers, the scholars who study ancient writing, point out that this shift from heavy, permanent clay to light, portable scrolls fundamentally changed how knowledge was stored and moved. An entire library's worth of data could now be carried in a single saddlebag. How does the very material you write on shape the spread of ideas? The answer is profoundly. With this new speed and portability, writing itself began to evolve. Scribes developed flowing cursive forms for rapid note-taking, allowing them to keep pace with dictation or record transactions in a busy market. They even began to experiment with early cryptographic techniques, using simple letter substitutions to encode sensitive military or commercial messages, a testament to the growing value and secrecy of information. This newly efficient writing became the lifeblood of science and literature. A Babylonian astronomical observation, once painstakingly impressed onto a bulky tablet, could now be quickly jotted on a scroll, copied a dozen times, and sent to scholars in Greece and India. Business correspondence flourished, with letters flying between partners across the empire, their survival giving us a window into the vibrant economic life of the era. Each of these scrolls and letters was a vessel carrying a fragment of a culture's soul. How do innovations in something as mundane as pen and ink determine which ideas survive for future generations? This very question leads us to the most profound use of the written word, the codification of belief and the creation of a moral compass that would guide millions. A divine marketplace of ideas opened in the wake of empire. The Babylonian god Marduk, once the supreme king of a crowded pantheon, now found his story heard by Persian priests who worshipped a single, transcendent god of light, Ahura Mazda. This was not a battle of beliefs, but a profound and unexpected collaboration. The old Mesopotamian view of the cosmos, where capricious gods sent messages through stars and animal livers, encountered the Zoroastrian vision of a universal moral struggle between truth and falsehood. The result was a spiritual synthesis that reshaped the ancient soul. Theologians point to how Persian religion began to absorb Babylonian astral symbolism, not as independent gods, but as divine emanations or aspects of Ahura Mazda's orderly creation. The planet Venus was no longer just the whimsical goddess Ishtar, but could be seen as a celestial soldier in the army of light. This fusion created a new emphasis on personal ethical behavior within a structured cosmos, where human choices actively participated in the cosmic battle between good and evil. You can see this shift etched into temple architecture. The traditional Babylonian ziggurat, a stairway to heaven for priests alone, began to be complemented by Persian-style open-air fire altars, where a flame representing divine truth and order could be witnessed by a wider community. This was a move from exclusive ritual to inclusive symbolism. The very calendar of festivals transformed, blending the Babylonian New Year's Akitu festival, which celebrated Marduk's victory over chaos, with Zoroastrian celebrations of the spring equinox, a symbol of light's triumph over darkness. New hybrid deities emerged to fill this spiritual landscape. A figure like Zervan, a god of infinite time and space, gained prominence as a philosophical bridge, a neutral ground from which both the good spirit and the destructive spirit could have emerged, satisfying Babylonian preoccupations with cosmic cycles and Persian dualism simultaneously. How does a shared spiritual framework hold a diverse empire together? It creates a common moral language. When a merchant from Sardis and a satrap from Bactria both believe in a cosmic law that rewards truth and punishes deceit, it builds a foundation of trust that goes beyond written contracts. This shared belief system even gave rise to early mystery cults, which promised initiates personal salvation and a privileged place in the afterlife, blending complex Babylonian astrology with Persian visions of a final judgment. The security offered by this cohesive spiritual world did more than just unify. It liberated the human spirit to play, to compete, and to imagine itself in new and daring ways. The clatter of dice on a wooden board was the sound of a culture at play. The royal game of a race game played with pyramidal dice and ornate game pieces, was a beloved pastime in the courtyards of Babylon. Its board, a rectangle of 20 squares decorated with rosettes and eyes, was a map of fate and strategy. After the Persian conquest, these game boards did not vanish, they migrated. A noble in Susa might receive a beautifully carved set as a gift, while a merchant's family in Egypt might play on a crudely copied board scratched onto a piece of limestone. The game itself began to transform in its new settings. Historians of ancient play note that the Persian version incorporated new rules, perhaps inspired by their own love of tactical thinking and chance. The simple race to the finish may have evolved to include elements of capture or blocking, mirroring the strategic realities of imperial politics. Archaeological digs have uncovered these hybrid game sets in the ruins of Persian mansions, their pieces a blend of Babylonian lapis lazuli and Persian turquoise. This was more than entertainment, it was a subtle teacher. The game required counting, probability, and forward planning, reinforcing the mathematical concepts that were the bedrock of Babylonian science. How does a simple board game prepare a mind for the complexities of statecraft or commerce? It builds the neural pathways for strategic risk assessment. The influence of this cross-cultural exchange is stunningly clear when we look at the lineage of later games. The basic structure of the royal game of with its two sets of pieces moving along a track, shares a direct ancestry with the Indian game of pachisi, and its strategic elements can be seen as a distant precursor to the complex maneuvers of chess, a game that would later embody the very essence of Persian and Indian military hierarchy. The dice themselves tell a story of technological sharing. Babylonians used tetrahedral dice that could land on one of 4 points, while Persians favored the 6-sided cubic dice we know today. In excavated game sets, we sometimes find both types together in the same box, a quiet testament to a player who enjoyed having options. These leisure innovations prove that the fusion sparked by Babylon's fall touched every aspect of life, from the stars to the marketplace, and even to the simple human need for play and mental challenge. This cognitive stimulation, this sharpening of the mind through games, was happening alongside another quiet revolution, one that was strengthening bodies and extending lives through changes to the most fundamental of human activities, the daily meal. A shared table is the most intimate form of exchange. The rich, heavy stews of Babylonian cuisine, slow cooked with lamb, leeks, and beets, began to transform in the imperial kitchens. Persian cooks introduced a dazzling array of new flavors, from saffron and turmeric to mint and parsley, while their mastery of grilling and roasting over open fires offered an alternative to the ubiquitous Babylonian pot. This was not just a change in taste, it was a revolution in nutrition and public health. Food historians point to the spread of fermentation techniques, where Babylonian knowledge of brewing beer and leavening bread merged with Persian methods for preserving vegetables and creating yogurt. The result was a diet rich in probiotics, which improved gut health and strengthened immune systems across a vast population. The humble date, a staple of the Babylonian orchard, found new life as a sweetener. Date syrup, or dibs, became a versatile alternative to honey, used to sweeten breads, marinate meats, and create nutritious, energy-dense cakes that could sustain laborers and soldiers on long journeys. Can you grasp the impact of a more reliable and varied food supply? It meant fewer deficiencies, stronger children, and a workforce with more energy and resilience. This culinary fusion became a centerpiece of social life, especially in the grand banquets of the elite. Historical records describe lavish feasts where roasted quail glazed with pomegranate and date syrup, a Persian-Babylonian hybrid, would be served alongside traditional barley flatbreads, now baked in a new type of oven. The tandoor, a cylindrical clay oven perfected in this period, allowed for bread to be baked quickly at intense heat, creating a fluffy interior and a crisp exterior. This was a cooking innovation born from the fusion of Babylonian clay working skills and Persian design for efficient, high-temperature cooking. The very tools of the kitchen evolved. Archaeologists have found bronze griddles and specialized cooking pots with new lid designs that better retained steam and flavor, artifacts of a society investing in the art of eating well. How does a more diverse and nutritious cuisine support the growth of civilization? It is the bedrock of population health, fueling not just bodies, but the collective brainpower needed for art, science, and governance. When people eat better, they think more clearly and live more productively. This dietary enrichment, however, created a new challenge for the growing, well-fed cities, a challenge of waste and water that would demand its own ingenious solutions. The health of a city flows through its gutters. Babylonian engineers had mastered the art of waste disposal, constructing networks of baked clay pipes and covered brick drains that channeled rainwater and refuse away from the crowded streets. Their focus, however, was often local, protecting individual temples and palaces. The Persian vision, shaped by managing a continent, saw these systems not as isolated projects, but as the vital organs of an entire urban body. They took the Babylonian blueprint and scaled it into a public health policy. integrating covered sewers and public latrines into the very foundation of their new planned cities. At administrative centers like Susa, archaeologists have unearthed the physical proof of this fusion: deep, stone-lined main sewers that collected waste from a grid of smaller Babylonian-style clay pipes running beneath residential districts. Public health historians point to this as a revolutionary leap, the creation of a municipal immune system. For the first time, an empire was investing its resources not just in monuments, but in the invisible infrastructure that kept its people alive and productive. Can you grasp the economic value of a city free from cholera and typhoid? It meant a stable workforce, fewer lost days to sickness, and a population capable of sustained, focused labor. This was not merely about engineering, it was about regulation. Persian administrators, drawing on the legalistic spirit of Hammurabi's code, began to enforce health ordinances. Surviving tablets from Susa detail fines for households that clogged the public drains with refuse, or for butchers who dumped offal in the streets. There were even records of officials whose sole duty was to inspect the water quality in public cisterns, ensuring the clean flow from the Qanats was not contaminated. This bureaucratic oversight transformed hygiene from a private concern into a civic responsibility. The concept of the public bath also began to evolve from simple ritual cleansing pools into more complex facilities, with separate hot and cold rooms becoming social hubs that promoted cleanliness across all classes. How does a society's innovative potential change when its people are not constantly battling disease? It is freed. The mental energy once consumed by survival can be redirected toward discovery, toward art, and toward the intricate mechanics of commerce. This newfound control over the urban environment, over water and waste, created a population with the time and health to care about measuring something even more elusive: the steady, unyielding passage of time itself. The steady drip of water marked the rhythm of an empire's day. Babylonian inventors had perfected the clepsydra, a water clock that used the constant flow of liquid from one vessel to another to measure passing hours. It was a brilliant device, essential for timing night watches and temple rituals, but its accuracy could waver with temperature and water pressure. After Babylon's fall, this technology did not stand still. Persian and Greek scholars, inheriting the basic design, began a relentless quest for precision. They added intricate gear mechanisms, turning the simple flow of water into a more reliable and complex machine. Horologists, the historians of timekeeping, point to surviving fragments from Alexandria that show a clepsydra equipped with a float that turned a gear train, which in turn could move a pointer across a dial or even ring a bell at set intervals. This was no longer just a timer, it was a programmable automaton. The sundial, another Babylonian tool, underwent a similar transformation. Its simple shadow cast on a marked stone evolved into a hemispherical bowl, known as a hemicycle, carefully calibrated for the latitude of a specific city, its curved surface accounting for the sun's changing path through the seasons. Can you grasp the conceptual leap from a shadow on the ground to a calibrated instrument that could account for the tilt of the Earth's axis? This was applied astronomy, bringing the grand scale of the cosmos down to the human scale of the daily schedule. The social impact of this newly precise time was profound. In the bustling agoras of Greek cities, the water clock governed the length of speeches in the law courts, ensuring each citizen had a fair and equal hearing. A plaintiff's entire case might be measured by the emptying of a specific vessel, a tangible pressure that sharpened rhetoric and focused arguments. In the observatories, these improved clocks allowed astronomers to record celestial events with a new accuracy, noting the exact moment a star disappeared behind the moon's edge, data that would be critical for refining their models of the universe. The synchronization of daily life accelerated. Markets could open and close at precisely announced times, allowing merchants from different districts to coordinate their movements. Labor on massive public works projects, like the digging of a new canal, could be organized into shifts with a water clock signaling the change. This shared, objective measure of time created a framework for unprecedented social and economic coordination. How does a society's potential change when its days are no longer ruled solely by the sun's arc, but by a collective, measured rhythm? It gains a new kind of momentum. The very fabric of civilization tightened, becoming more efficient, more predictable, and more capable of complex, synchronized endeavors. This mastery over the minutes and hours was the final, crucial piece of a shared operational system, one that wove together the laws, the markets, and the stars into a single, coherent tapestry of progress. These ripples of Babylonian thought did not fade with Persia or Rome. They simply flowed into new channels, waiting to resurface centuries later. The vast libraries of the Hellenistic world, especially the legendary Library of Alexandria, became the new custodians of this dispersed knowledge. Here, Greek scholars pored over translated Babylonian astronomical records, data that had been meticulously kept for nearly 1,000 years. This long-term perspective was a gift that Greek science, for all its philosophical brilliance, could never have generated on its own. It provided the observational bedrock upon which the great syntheses of Hipparchus and Ptolemy were built, models of the cosmos that would dominate scientific thought for over a millennium. The historian of science Otto Neugebauer spent his career tracing this lineage, demonstrating that Ptolemy's star catalogue in the Almagest relied heavily on Babylonian parameters and methods. The very mathematical tools that Babylonian astronomers used to predict lunar eclipses, a complex pattern known as the Saros cycle, were the same tools that allowed later astronomers to check the accuracy of their own models. Can you grasp the power of a data set that spans generations? It allows you to see patterns that are invisible within a single human lifetime. This legacy was not confined to astronomy. The Babylonian base 60 system, with its elegant divisibility, never truly disappeared. It survived in our measurement of time and angles, a quiet testament to its practical genius. Even the conceptual ancestor of the number 0, a placeholder used in their positional notation, traveled eastward. It was refined during the Islamic Golden Age, when scholars in Baghdad's House of Wisdom actively sought out and translated ancient scientific texts, including those from Mesopotamia. They recognized the power of these older systems, blending them with Indian and Greek mathematics to create the algebra and algorithmic thinking that would later fuel the European Renaissance. A historian of mathematics might point to a specific clay tablet, YBC 7289, which shows a remarkably accurate calculation of the square root of 2 using a method that foreshadows later iterative techniques. This was not magic, it was a reproducible, logical process. When Copernicus began to dismantle the Earth-centered universe, he was standing on a pyramid of accumulated data, much of which had its origins in the clay tablets of Babylon. His revolutionary model required precise planetary positions to be convincing, and that precision was built upon centuries of Babylonian observational records. Even Isaac Newton, for all his unparalleled genius, was working within a mathematical and astronomical tradition that had been fertilized by these ancient sources. His laws of motion and universal gravitation needed a universe that ran on predictable, mathematical principles, a concept that Babylonian sky watchers were among the first to operationalize, even if their framework was one of divine omen. How does an idea born in the dust of a fallen empire manage to whisper across 2,000 years? It survives because it is useful. it survives because it is true. The collaboration forced by Babylon's fall created a reservoir of knowledge so deep and so robust that it could be drawn upon again and again, each new civilization adding its own layer of understanding. The fall was not an end, but a great scattering of seeds, many of which would lie dormant for centuries, only to sprout in minds and places the Babylonians could never have imagined. The collapse of a political center can be the very event that liberates its ideas. The fall of Babylon was not an ending, but a great scattering, a diaspora of genius that transformed the ancient world. Its knowledge, once concentrated within mighty walls, flowed outward along Persian roads and Greek trade routes, igniting an age of innovation that reshaped everything from the stars above to the streets below. The Base 60 mathematical system, a tool for Babylonian astronomers, became the universal language for dividing time and space. The meticulous tracking of celestial cycles evolved into predictive astronomy, while principles of law and urban planning were scaled to manage continents. This was not a simple transfer, but a profound fusion where Babylonian ingenuity was amplified by Persian integration and later refined by Greek philosophy. It reveals a powerful truth about human progress, that our greatest leaps forward often follow periods of breakdown, when old barriers fall and once isolated streams of thought converge into a mighty river. The end of one empire became the intellectual bedrock for many. As you consider our own interconnected world, what parallels do you see? How might the challenges we face today be secretly forging the tools for tomorrow's golden age? Share in the comments which ancient innovation from this story surprises you the most: the humble water clock, the resilient legal code, or perhaps the mathematical system still ticking on your wrist. Subscribe for more journeys into the mysteries of history that continue to whisper their lessons to our modern